What's good, you guys? Welcome back to another stream. My name is Tamaria, and I go by Tamaria Lakate on all my social media platforms. So feel free to follow me on your favorite one. Tonight, we are still diving into a read along in my first memoir, I Do, but Not Till Death, now available on Amazon and Kindle. This is my true life story where I'm discussing my inner turmoils, relational codependencies, and my spiritual conflicts as I am journeying through life at such a very young age, just leaping into the world and gaining experience that seemed mostly bad when I was experiencing it and going through it. But if not for God pulling me up out of all of the dark moments, um, there's no telling where I would be, how I would be, um, sitting here today, if I would even be sitting here today, had I continued to make the choices in the same manner in which I made them in my earlier years of life. I know there's a lot of conversation from the manosphere that say they want the women young, they prefer them younger. And I just want to let you know they prefer you young because not to say that you're dumb in every aspect of life, but you're definitely an experience when it comes to dealing with the different types of spirits and people that you may encounter, especially men, but not only men, also women. So without having the opportunity to just sit with yourself, sit with God, develop your relationship with yourself and God, strengthen your discernment, strengthen your intuition, because your intuition works not only just when someone's cheating on you, it works in a lot of other aspects of your life as well. So, this is going to be chapter 2. I did already release chapter 1. You can find the replay on my YouTube channel, which reminds me that I need to go ahead and just create an entire playlist for this read along for this specific book. But yeah, I'm just here to share my testimony with a heart and a mind that it will help someone else to make better decisions, or to help someone who has currently or is currently in a situation that they don't want to be in, to have the faith to get out of it, to leave it. So yeah, that is what I feel like is my purpose for now. I don't know what my purpose will be next year or the year after that, but right now, God wants me to go ahead and share my testimony with people. And I feel like, with everything going on, it just kind of feels like the perfect time. I'm not here to bash anyone, male or female, but I know we have a lot of work to do when it comes to creating environments, relationships, and connections in a healthier manner. Um, After all the things that I've been through, I still have hope in humanity because I know the power of God. And if God can help me, then I'm pretty sure He can help anybody. You would just have to ask God for help and assistance, and then be willing and ready to go through the process in order to get said help and assistance. But that's enough of me preaching for right now. I'm going to go ahead and jump into chapter 2, and I'm going to read bits and pieces of it. I'm not going to read the whole chapter all the way through. So if you want to know exactly everything that happens, of course, you're going to have to go ahead and purchase the book. I am going to leave a post on my Instagram and as well my Snapchat. And on that post, it's going to be open forum for you to ask me questions about my story, or if you just want advice for yourself, then I'm open to helping in any way that I can. Of course, I would say seek God first, but if you just want to throw something out there, then again, I am open. So, chapter 2 is titled, Then There Was the Wrong to Deciding to Life. Then there was the wrong to deciding to life. When you're young, for some reason, we just want to jump into these relationships and we want to make them our be all, end all. And we want that person to love us for the rest of our lives. And we put such a hard strain on ourselves and the partner that we're connecting with. And, when things go south, because we didn't put God first in choosing this person. We put our ego and what this person would do to us and make us feel and how this person would make us look. And then we end up in situations with broken hearts, painful scars, traumatic situations, right? And it's all because we're moving within an intent to, do something that's going to satisfy our physical body versus doing something that will satisfy your physical and your spiritual body, which is really important when it comes to cultivating a long-lasting relationship. So if you are young and you find yourself in a situation, I would definitely not try to put the pressure on yourself or your person to be in a committed relationship straight out of high school, straight out of college. Of course, it's something that you can keep in mind, but I feel like you should just allow life and the experience and the experiment with the person to not be so anchored in your soul to where if it doesn't work out, then you're just like, causing yourself to have an unnecessary scar, right? So, started preaching again. Let me go ahead and read. All right, so we are in chapter 2 of I Do But Not Till Death. All right, so if you haven't seen chapter 1, go check that out again on YouTube. All right, chapter 2. Then there was the wrong to deciding to life. Let me take a sip. Okay. Their reunion, a faithful convergence, unfolded unexpectedly. The roar of the Aggies crowd vibrated through Tamaria's chest. She scanned the bleachers, a sea of black and gold, until an unfamiliar face snagged her attention. A sudden cheering shock reverberated through her being. Fifi, there, halfway down the aisle, laughing with a group of girls, the same mischievous glint in her eyes. Tamaria's heart hammered. Wait, she whispered. Is that really? She weaved through the crowd, a tide of jerseys and cheering voices. Fifi. Fifi turned and smiled, widening into a grin that lit up her face like a stadium. Tamaria, wow, I didn't expect to see you here. A brief, breathless catch up followed. A whirlwind exchange of numbers. Fifi's eyes sparkling explained she was back in town, working at a group home, hence the basketball outing. I'll hit you up later, Fifi said, a playful wink punctuating the words. Later translated into a text buzzing against Tamaria's thigh before midnight. What you doing? Come see me. The Pentecostal church, a looming presence on the route to Fifi, stirred a poignant recollection of Tamaria's fervent, repeated baptisms, her desperate yearning for a spiritual rebirth and a closer walk with Christ. Arriving at the Lawton Housing Authority, a place vibrating with a low urban pulse, a shared past resonated deeply. Their similar origins forged an unspoken understanding. Fifi's parents' apartment smelled faintly of chili and old wood. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Words tumbled out. A torrent of confessions and apologies, reconciliation etched against the backdrop of Fifi's bedroom. It wasn't long before Fifi's lips found Tamaria's, a slow, deliberate press that deepened into a hungry kiss. The taste of Fifi's tongue, a feather light, began to exploration. Hold on, let me pop my neck. Oh God. Ugh. I need to go see a chiropractor for real. Okay, let me read that over. Okay, it wasn't long before Fifi's lips found Tamaria, a slow, deliberate press that deepened into a hungry kiss. The taste of Fifi's tongue, a feather light, began an exploration of Tamaria's most intimate landscape and sent shivers cascading down her spine. A moan, barely suppressed, escaped with each deliberate mouthful. Fifi's longing for Tamaria intensified, a poignant ache echoing in her heart. The sheer joy Fifi derived from coaxing Tamaria's metallic voice from beneath the covers was intoxicating. Fifi found solace, a balm to her weary spirit, in the whispered, sensual sounds Tamaria produced. The rhythmic thump of a bass from a nearby apartment mixed with the frantic beat of Tamaria's heart. Fifi's touch, sure and practiced, sent wave after wave of pleasure crashing over her. Multiple orgasms, a breathless crescendo, followed by the quiet exhaustion of sleep, their bodies intertwined. Dawn broke, spilling pale light across the sheets. The scent of Fifi's hair, a mix of coconut oil, Cantu leave-in conditioner, and something indefinitely Fifi lingered in the air. That morning, Tamaria dropped Fifi off at work. The quiet hum of the engine, a counterpoint to the bubbling excitement in her own chest. Back at her dad's house, the shower was a cleansing rinse. Back at her dad's house, the shower was a cleansing ritual, washing away sleep and apprehension, replacing it with the heady rush of a future they'd already begun sketching, an apartment away from their parents' watchful eyes, as they decided immediately to pick up where they left off prior to their first separation. Tamaria trading her rap dreams for the promise of a degree and felt no regret. The student loans felt like a small price to pay for the idea of their shared future. Fifi, the steady hand, assured Tamaria that she covered the financial strain. The impulsive leap felt right, a breathtaking fall into a future they had no doubt they'd build together. Despite the red flags, waving like caution tape. They were both fully invested. The rush of it all, intoxicating. After searching all over town, finding a place near both Tamaria's school and Fifi's place of employment felt almost too good to be true. A few minutes away, destiny, or so it seemed. The deposit in the first month's rent were paid, unaware that their new home wouldn't hold them for long. Samaria unpacked furniture from her storage. The two women carefully cultivated their living space, showering each other with affection. But the idyllic facade was crumbling. Samaria initially dismissed Fifi's declarations of bipolar disorder as theatrical exaggeration, but the unsettling pronouncements gradually eroded her skepticism. The casual mentioning of buying a gun initially agreed to, with Tamaria assuming she'd be the one not using it, now felt like a reckless decision. The trip to the pawn shop across the street from where Tamaria's mother and stepfather had lived felt ominous. A cold dread, a premonition of something terrible settled in her gut, a feeling she couldn't shake. It wasn't the gun itself. It was the escalating instability she saw in Fifi. Despite their shared excursions in close proximity, Tamaria's grasp of Fifi was initially shallow, a deceptive closeness concealing a vast chasm of their unknowing. Slowly, in the fragile light of their burgeoning connection, Fifi's essence revealed itself. Each precious facet gradually emerging. Okay, take a wine break. Samaria watched, bewildered, as Fifi's fury erupted like a wildfire. The botched AT&T Wi-Fi installation canceled and rescheduled had become the final straw, shattering Fifi's already fragile composure. Samaria, oblivious to the debilitating weight of Fifi's mental illness, struggled to comprehend the intensity of her lover's emotional devastation. The incident wasn't merely an inconvenience, it was a stark azonite. My tongue's getting dry from this wine, I'm not even gonna lie, but I'm also starting to feel it, which should be a good thing. Let me start over, y'all. Okay. So Tamaria watched, bewildered, as Fifi's fury erupted like a wildfire. The botched AT&T Wi-Fi installation canceled and rescheduled had become the final straw, shattering Fifi's already fragile composure. Tamaria, oblivious to the debilitating weight of Fifi's mental illness, struggled to comprehend the intensity of her lover's emotional devastation. The incident wasn't merely an inconvenience, it was a stark, agonizing manifestation of a deeper, unseen struggle. Tamaria's unease transformed into outright terror as Fifi's anger escalated, fueled by bipolar episodes, only self-medicated with weed and sex. The gun, hidden under the car seat on the way to the AT&T store, felt like a ticking time bomb. Convincing Fifi to leave it in the car felt like a victory stolen from the battlefield. But the victory was hollow. It was a choice born of fear, a betrayal of her own growing suspicion that Fifi might be genuinely dangerous. The qualities Tamaria rejected in a prospective companion. That night, the intimacy felt different. The affection was laced with fear. Tamaria felt a chasm opening between them, a growing gulf of terror and guilt. She'd chosen to ignore the warning signs, dismissed Fifi's mental health struggles, and now the gun, a symbol of their reckless decisions, sat between them like a third silent roommate. All right, and so I'm going to skip a few pages and then I'll let you guys read that part. One thing I will say is that music plays a big part in, I would say, my emotional regulation. I'm not going to say I know how to regulate my emotions without music, but as a younger person, I really gravitated towards music and I allowed music to tell a story for me or to create a story that I wanted to live, right? If I felt the song, if I felt the musician, then I kind of like was like, oh my God, what they're saying. And this song is exactly what I want for my life. So I've always kind of like either felt closely connected to music or got answers from music, got deep feelings from music, got inspirations to move in life and love from music. Like, I'm a music girly, right? I do love music. I do enjoy a good song, romantic, R&B, hip hop, country, gospel. It don't matter. I love it all. As you guys seen, I gave up my rap career. Now she gave up her rap career to get a degree, right? So, yeah, music has always been an intricate part of my life as well. So I'm going to skip some parts and we're going to go ahead and hop in right here, still in chapter 2, but just, skipping over some sections. All right. A platinum disc, Miguel's album, shone brightly on the coffee table. Its throbbing bass resonating through the house's very foundations. To Tamaria, each track was a sacred testament to their bond, an unspoken language only their hearts deciphered. Lost in the hypnotic repetition of my piece, she remained utterly unaware of the ominous foreshadowing woven into the enchanting rhythm. Tamaria's son, a tempest of energy and mirth, burst into their lives each weekend, a kaleidoscope of vibrant energy disrupting their chaotic solitude. Fifi always cherished his presence, her caress soft as she stroked his unruly curls, a potent counterpoint to the simmering jealousy that colored their own bond when he left. Tamaria, a more substantial presence with a spirited nature, delighted in mock comebacks with Fifi on the floor. The boisterous tussles punctuated by peals of laughter occasionally accumulated in Fifi's subjugation, her eyes widening and a fleeting expression of apprehension that bordered on genuine fright. She watched Fifi, her eyes searching for answers in the enigmatic lines around her mouth, the subtle clenches of her jaw. What fractured her heart? What buried pain drove this imbalance? Her questions, carefully phrased, met only with evasive smiles, a wall of silence. Was it fear? Did a debilitating mental illness trigger Fifi's initial act of brandishing a firearm at Samaria? Or was it a malevolent force, a sinister entity dwelling deep within her soul that seized control? A chilling weight of metal, the pistol dug cruelly in Fifi's hand, the harsh kitchen light, a stark, unforgiving glare reflected off its slick surface. A velvet gleam in the sterile environment. Samaria didn't flinch, her gaze unwavering, a predator's stillness masking a heart that had long since learned to be the rhythm of violence. This threat wasn't new. It was a familiar serpent coiled in the pit of her stomach, the chilling echo of a life lived on the razor edge, a life where faith was the only armor against the relentless onslaught of brutality. Her faith, however, was no fragile whisper. It was a roaring inferno, a searing brand etched onto her soul, promising salvation even amidst the encroaching darkness. Let me see how much we got left here. Chapter 2 kind of long. Oh, chapter 2 kind of long. Okay. With a glacial slowness, deliberate and chilling. Yeah, I'm not gonna put this on YouTube. They might try to flag the video right here. So I'm gonna let y'all read that part on y'all's own. Let me see. Okay, so the air vibrated, a tangible thing, thick with the unspoken words, the weight of 1,000 betrayals, a lifetime of shared silences, heavy with the suffocating reek of betrayal and regret. The silence wasn't just empty, it was a crushing entity, a suffocating shroud woven from years of unspoken truths, screaming louder than any scream ever could. It was the silence of a broken, it was the silence of broken hearts, the silence before the storm. Okay, I'm gonna skip a little bit, you guys. Okay, we're gonna start here. Then the rug was yanked out from under Fifi's feet. Job gone, vanished like a phantom, less than a month after the celebratory champagne bubbles had barely faded from their new apartment's gleaming countertops. The scent of fresh paint, once exhilarating, now choked her with the bitter tang of failure. Then the hammer blow, her brother's diagnosis, the words HIV positive, a poisoned dart piercing Fifi's heart. The vibrant color, the vibrant colors of their new life, the carefully chosen throw pillows, the sun-drenched optimism all bled into a blurring, nauseating gray. This wasn't just bad luck. This was a goddamn berserk. a relentless barrage of catastro- catastrophic events, each one heavier, a more brutal blow than the last. Again, the silence in the apartment screamed louder than any argument ever could. All right, we're gonna skip around some more, you guys. Okay, yeah, we're gonna get right here. All right. Oh, we gotta hurry up because we's at 30 minutes already and we still gotta do a little bit of talking. Okay, so one night Samaria sat in the car in front of their apartment, heavily intoxicated, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. The cheating accusations had been hanging over them like a guillotine. Each late night arrival, chipping away at the fragile foundation of their relationship. Tonight, though, felt different. The air crackled with a vital energy, and she had a chilling certainty Fifi was going to pull the trigger, not just figuratively. It didn't happen that night. The fear, however, was a relentless tide pulling her under far faster than any plan could counteract. Samaria had unknowingly manifested it through her fearful thoughts and emotions, a horrifying realization that clawed at her conscience. A visceral certainty had always pulsed within her, the unshakable faith in a God capable of everything. She clung to that belief, a lifeline in the churning sea of her life, convinced he would orchestrate her salvation. A puppet master pulling the strings. But the blinding truth realized much later in life, now a searing brand upon her soul, was this: God wasn't some distant celestial puppeteer. God resides within us. God resides within us all. A molten core of power, ignored, buried beneath layers of poisonous resignation. Her will, the tempest fire in her belly, shaped her reality, each doubt a poisoned dart, each act of faith a hammer blow, forging her destiny. She had surrendered agency, relinquishing her birthright to a phantom hand, only to discover the terrifying exhilaration, only to discover the terrifying, exhilarating truth, the power, the terrifying responsibility rested solely, entirely within her. Now, staring into the abyss of her own creation, that belief felt like a brittle, shattered mirror reflecting only her failure. A fierce internal battle raged, the voice of her rational self, her carefully constructed morality screamed at her to resist, to fight back against this fear she'd inadvertently conjured. But a darker voice, a chilling whisper, born of panic and self preservation, urged her to embrace the impending doom, to surrender to the inevitable. And then there's some more, but we're going to leave that right there for chapter 2. So there was a lot of things that, again, we left out in chapter 2. I'm going to go ahead and look and see if I have any notes in my original draft to go over with you guys. Parts of me be wanting to stop in the middle of the book when I be feeling like wanting to say this, but then I also want to get through it. So let me see if I can recall anything from my notes. Okay, come on. Where's chapter 2? Man, we got some notes for here. Okay. So I did mention the Pentecostal church on my way to go and see PP that I have been baptized many times. Raised as a Christian, I, grew up pretty much in a Baptist and then I did try Pentecostal. So, you go to one church and they say you got to get baptized in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then you go to another church and you got to get baptized in Jesus. The only thing that I've ever, or the only group that I've ever really tried to, force my way into is, the group of the Most High, the kingdom of the Most High. And so I was going around trying to get baptized in every and which way that I could in order to be a part of the winning team. You hear me? So um, I was spiritually insecure because when I got baptized, I was like, oh, I'm going to be born again. Right. But I didn't really realize until, many, 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 many cycles of life in this world that in order to be born again, it's really a choice, right? It's a choice to change with conviction, right? Once again, in chapter 1, it's a choice that you have to make, right, in order to change. And you have to have a lot of conviction behind that change, right? So that you can be born again, so that you don't make the same mistakes that you are habitually making, right? You have certain habits, certain routines, certain ways of thinking, certain ways of being that cause you to fall into situations that bring you further away from God rather than bringing closer away from God. Once you can start to build that relationship with God and yourself, then you become born again, right? Because you become a new person from the inside out versus trying to become a new person from the outside in, which is something that I struggled with. I low key felt like I had to walk the same path as Jesus, and I carried the burden of so many people on my back until situation after situation just taught me that I'm saying, it's not my job to save people because that's what Jesus came to do, right? That's what the Most High came to do, is to save, right? And all I had to do was just believe, right? I didn't have to do anything externally. I had to do the work on the inside. And it was like, even though I was doing some of the work by believing on the inside, I wasn't really like cultivating my thought patterns. I wasn't really cultivating my own relationship, right? Because I was too busy trying to cultivate the relationships outside of me, right? Thinking that the outside validation or the outside relationship that I'm building was going to be everything that I needed and more, when the relationship that I truly needed was within, right? Within myself, within my thought process and my conversation process internally with the Most High. So, regardless of who I am or what I've been through, the invitation to come with no judgment isn't like, oh, you know, like God isn't going to accept me because I've done this or I've said that or I've lived this way or I failed in this area. God is always going to accept you no matter where you're at. And so I felt like I had to prove my worth to God externally, treating people right, giving, being a giver. I thought I had to do a lot of the things on the outside, but really I needed to give myself that grace and that compassion that I was giving to everyone else. And it was a journey, and you don't have to go through the trenches in order to get to heaven, but it seems like that is a path that a lot of people are on. They're in the trenches and they're wanting to get to heaven through external factors when they need to do it internally, right? internally first. Seek ye the kingdom of heaven internally, and then all the things will be added to you externally. It took me a while to cultivate that mindset, cultivate that mindset, and also live within that heart posture, because it's something that you have to work on, because you're conditioned to believe and be a certain kind of way based on the ways of the world. And once you start connecting with God, you realize that those don't really coexist very well, God's ways and the world's way. And you have to choose a path. And so, working on choosing that path to go higher instead of lower, then you just become in a better place. And now that was a lot just for that. Let's see. So a few minutes away, destiny, or so it seemed. I feel like God put me in that specific location for a specific reason, which we will get into later in the book. And if you remember or remind me to bring this back up. But the destination of where I was at was very vital. And I feel like even the destination that I'm in right now, I see the signs and the symbols of what God has put me here to do. I would love to explain that, but I just, not right now. Not right now. In another video, hopefully. So yeah, if you are seeking God, it's definitely a journey. It's definitely a lot of trust that you have to put into yourself, and then also the process. You can't want to step outside the boat, even if it's on water, and think that you're going to sink, because you will. You have to have an unbreakable amount of faith and conviction, emotional and mental conviction, that what God says he's going to do, he's going to do it, right? And that's, saving your soul and providing you with the life that you want, you deserve, you desire, right? So let's see. One thing we have to realize is that a lot of people are, going through their own walk, right? And whether that walk is with God or that walk is, towards something a little bit more dark, people have their own internal battles or demons to deal with, right? And you may not necessarily be able to see them until it's too late, which is another reason why it's very good to keep, some distance in between wanting to commit, right? And not forcing people into your lives when you don't even know exactly who they are and what they are carrying within them, right? Especially when you laying down and being intimate with them as well. I need to go light the candle again. Okay, and then what else? But yeah, things such as mental illnesses can be also associated with spiritual war. And in my mind, from my mindset, I feel like, God is able to cure and heal any and all things if completely surrendered to God to do it, right? It may be a process, but I definitely feel like it's something that can be done. All right. And so there was a part in the book that I didn't talk about, or there was a part in the book that I didn't read because it was kind of like our intimate moment, and I didn't want the video to get flagged. But something I had to realize with her as well is that she was a giver in the bedroom. And I felt like, I didn't have my opportunity to give back to her because she didn't like that, which I talk about in chapter 2 as well. But like I said, I didn't read that part. And Um, a part of me feels like it's kind of like, you know, somebody who gives, you have to be careful because sometimes when it comes to intimacy, people do want to trap and bond you to them with those methods, right? By being a giver in the bedroom. And it's like a power move, a power play. And, you know, if you're not mentally and emotionally and physically strong and you allow that connection to tether you to that person and you have a soul tie, then you ultimately end up in, you know, some some weird positions and places. So you need to make sure you and your partner are on the same page always when it comes to giving and receiving in the physical and the spiritual. All right, let's see. We have 5 more minutes. I'm trying to keep these under an hour because right. And if you're in a situation and it's just like red flag after red flag after red flag after red flag, or things don't seem to be aligned, and then whatever it is that you're working on, like us, we were having an issue with actually finding a place. It just, you know, one place was giving, like, I understand you're going to come into things and it's not going to align perfectly. But as for me, I feel like when it's from God and it's of God, like things work out perfectly, or at least you have to sit in that faith in order for it to happen. But we were just having like some rough times finding an apartment. And then, like I said, I feel like the location of that apartment was us being placed there specifically for a purpose, right? Maybe it's to be telling the story. I don't know, but I feel like we was there for a definite reason. But we had plenty of opportunities to be like, you know what, maybe we're rushing into this, maybe we're moving too fast. Let's slow down, reconsider, regroup, and, you know, move a little bit slower. But no. All right, you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and end that right now for chapter 2. I did have some more notes, but I don't feel like I have enough time to get into it. But if you do have any questions, or if you want to submit your own personal questions about your own personal relationship, again, I'm open to that. I will be doing a live Q&A video to answer you guys' questions. But that is pretty much it. Make sure you like this video, share this video on any of your social media platforms. Again, the book is available on Amazon and Kindle. If you purchase it, tag me on any social media platform and I will go ahead and get you a shout out on one of the up and coming videos. And yeah, sending you peace, protection, and prosperity, not only today, but tomorrow and forever. And I will see you guys in chapter 3. Yeah, let's get into it. Bye.